All right, so let's dive right in. We're taking a deep dive into Laurus Labs today and their strategic moves over the past year. We've got 3 quarterly reports and some presentations, all to try and understand how their growth strategy is evolving.
Yeah.
I think we can skip the Pharma 101 since, you're no stranger to how this world works.
What's really interesting about this deep dive to me is we're not just getting a snapshot in time, right? We're tracking Laurus Labs over 3 quarters, seeing their wins, how they adjust when things get tough. It's like a real-time look at how a company in this space operates.
Exactly. And just as a quick reminder, Laurus Labs, they're based in India, publicly traded, and they do it all. APIs, generics, custom manufacturing. They're even testing the waters with cell and gene therapies. But here's what I think is really cool. They're building India's first commercial-scale microbial fermentation facility. And their new R&D facility is massive, over 200,000 square feet.
That's a huge sign, isn't it? Like, they're not just content to stick to what they know. They're going for those high-growth areas. That's a big shift for a company known for APIs and generics, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. So let's rewind to July 2024, Q1 of their fiscal year 25. Let's see what they were reporting back then.
All right, so in Q1, they had revenue growth of just 1%. Okay, that might sound a little underwhelming, but when you dig a bit deeper, you see it was intentional. They were shifting resources towards more complex CDMO projects, the kind that can be really lucrative down the line. But those take time, right, before they really impact the balance sheet.
So they're playing the long game, and their gross margin for the quarter, 55.1%. That kind of tells the story too, doesn't it?
Definitely. It tells me they're being super selective about which projects they take on, not just chasing every deal. They want a highly profitable operation. And for investors, that's a good sign, that kind of discipline.
Reassuring to see for sure. And their CapEx plan for capital expenditures, right?
Yeah.
It also supports this idea of going for quality over quantity. They're pouring money into expanding their CDMO capabilities.
Yeah.
That's a big signal, right? They're really committing to that sector.
Yeah, actions speak louder than words, right? They're putting their money where their mouth is. And on top of that, they released their integrated report. That included their progress on environmental, social, and governance goals, all that ESG stuff. So they're thinking about sustainability alongside profits, which is more and more important these days.
Okay, let's move on to October 2024, their second quarter. They were pretty upfront about it being kind of a slow first half of the year, a flat revenue growth overall.
And it's not surprising, is it? Those long lead times in the CDMO business mean you don't see immediate results. But even with that flat growth, they were seeing strong demand for CMO-CDMO integrated services and complex APIs. So the groundwork was being laid, even if it wasn't showing up in the revenue numbers yet.
Right. And they weren't just waiting around. This is when they opened that huge R&D facility we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
What do you make of that timing with the slow growth and all?
I think it shows they weren't panicking. They believe in their strategy, doubling down even. That facility is made for these complex projects they're taking on. Bold move, for sure, but also very strategic, I think.
All right, now let's jump ahead to January 2025, Q3. This is where things get a little more exciting.
Yeah, things start to click. You see their strategy actually paying off. Revenue growth jumps to 18%, mostly driven by their CDMO and FDF, that's finished dosage form performance. Their new assets started coming online, projects on track. You can see that patience starting to, bear fruit.
And the profit margins reflect that too. EBITDA margin jumps to 20.1%. That's a pretty clear sign that focusing on those higher value projects is working, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Oh, and remember that microbial fermentation facility? Well, this is when 8 Roads Ventures, a big global venture capital firm, jumped in. They co-invested in Laurus Bio to get that facility going.
So why is that co-investment such a big deal?
Well, it's a vote of confidence, isn't it? From a major player. And it's not just the money. They bring expertise, networks, and remember, this facility ties directly into Laurus Labs' sustainability goals. So they're innovating across the board, not just products, but the entire manufacturing process. It's bold.
So 3 quarters, we've seen Laurus Labs make some deliberate choices, navigate a bit of a slowdown, and then finally see their strategy start to pay off.
And you know what I find really interesting? Their outlook for the whole fiscal year 2025, it stayed consistent throughout all of this. Even when things were moving slowly, they stuck to their projections. Shows a lot of faith in their long-term plan.
Welcome back to our Laurus Labs deep dive. Last time we were talking about that momentum starting to build. Let's really break it down and see how they're doing this. You're no stranger to this world, so let's zoom in on one area in particular, their R&D efforts.
Right, because in this industry, it's innovate or die. Right.
Right.
So what are they doing that's really pushing the boundaries? One thing that stands out is their commitment to sustainable solutions. That's a big focus for pharma as a whole right now. And they're not just talking about it, they're putting their money into things like continuous flow chemistry and
Okay,
biocatalysis.
I'm gonna need a little more on those, huh? I'm guessing those are more than just buzzwords for Laurus Labs. How are they actually using these technologies?
They're making them core competencies, not just little side projects, right? So, for example, they've implemented commercial scale continuous flow reactions, and they're rolling that out across different units. This is a big deal because it gives them more control over the manufacturing process, more efficient, less waste.
So it's not just about being green, it's about being better, period.
Exactly. That's their edge.
Yeah,
Now, biocatalysis, that's where they're using enzymes to, drive those chemical reactions.
yeah, like using nature's tools to make medicine. Pretty cool, right? But how does that fit into their big picture strategy?
This is where it gets really interesting. It's not just a few projects here and there. This is becoming like a platform technology for them. They're using it for multiple APIs already. They even partnered up with Willow Biosciences to develop bio-based manufacturing for steroid and hormonal APIs. So imagine the cost savings and environmental benefits if they can scale this up. It's huge.
Sounds like a big bet on this tech.
It is. And to back up that kind of R&D, you need serious brain power. Laurus Labs has over 1,200 R&D scientists. And that new facility, it's built to house and support this team. That's a big investment. Shows they're serious about staying ahead of the curve.
But R&D is only as good as what it produces, right? What are some of the, tangible outcomes from all this effort?
Well, they've racked up a bunch of patents for their processes and technologies. They've launched over 80 drug substances and products. That means they're taking research and actually, turning it into solutions.
So it's not just science experiments, they're getting stuff out there. Are they, focused on their own products or working with outside companies too?
Both. They're building their own pipeline, but they're also a popular CDMO partner for companies all over.
So not just playing in their own backyard, helping others innovate too. That's a smart move,
Oh, yeah.
especially in such a competitive landscape.
For sure. Now, let's talk about regulations for a sec. You know how important quality and compliance are in this industry? And Laurus Labs, they've got a pretty stellar track record. They've got all the right approvals. US FDA, WHO, the European Medicines Agency. Over 50 inspections passed. That shows real commitment to the highest standards.
Yeah, that's not easy. It's one thing to check the boxes, but this is building a culture of quality. And for a company with global ambitions, well, that's a must-have, right?
Absolutely. One quality standard for all markets, that's their motto. No cutting corners, no matter where the products go.
Okay, we've covered their R&D regulations. What else is driving this growth we've been talking about? I mean, they had some big revenue jumps in their last few reports. What's the fuel for that engine?
One factor is definitely their focus on building capacity, expanding their global footprint. Remember those CapEx plans we talked about? They're investing in new development and manufacturing sites. Not just building factories, but being really strategic about it, positioning themselves for the future.
It's that whole build it and they will come idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it takes some guts to make those investments, especially with things changing so fast.
Oh, yeah. And their CDMO business is booming. Global demand is just exploding for specialized expertise and manufacturing capabilities. They've really carved out a niche, especially with complex APIs and high-value projects.
So they're riding the wave of that CDMO boom, but they're also being smart about how they ride it, right? They're not forgetting about their generics business, though, are they?
Right. And that side faces its own challenges. You've got those pricing pressures, but they're dealing with it head on, focusing on cost optimization, efficiency, not just accepting the status quo, actively looking for ways to stay ahead of the game.
So it's a balancing act, isn't it? Taking care of their core business, but also pushing into these newer areas. And speaking of new areas, let's talk about cell and gene therapies. Yeah. That's a whole different ballgame, even for a company like Laurus Labs. How are they approaching that?
They're going at it from multiple angles. They've got dedicated facilities for cell and gene therapies. They've got a cutting-edge CAR-RT facility in Mumbai. And there's more. A second CAR-T facility in the works, and they're setting up India's first gene GMP facility.
Wow, that's commitment. Are they seeing any results, though, or are they just, throwing money around?
They're putting their money where their mouth is, yes. But they're hitting milestones, too. Their next CAR-19 therapy, a CAR-RT treatment, has treated over 200 patients, and it's available in over 60 authorized treatment centers in India. That's real progress.
It's more than just testing the waters. They're diving in head first.
Exactly. And they're using their existing strengths to navigate this, process development, manufacturing scale up, all that regulatory stuff. They're also exploring new partnerships and collaborations to tap into even more cutting edge technologies. So, internal innovation plus external expertise. Smart move.
It sounds like they're all in on cell and gene therapies. It's risky, but potentially a game changer, right?
Absolutely. And it really shows how committed they are to, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in medicine. Don't forget, they're doing all of this while managing their core business NAD, growing their CDMO side. That's a lot to handle, but they seem to be doing it well.
Okay, so we've talked about their R&D, regulations, their commitment to sustainability. What's the one big thing we haven't really dug into yet?
Well, we touched on sustainability when it comes to their processes and tech, but we haven't talked about their overall commitment to environmental and social responsibility. And these days, that's not just a nice to have, it's essential.
You're right, investors are paying more and more attention to this. So how is Laurus Labs approaching it beyond just the tech stuff?
They've really woven it into how they do business, implementing eco-friendly tech across the board. Things like electric vehicles at their units, they're working on reducing water consumption, waste, promoting ethical business practices throughout their whole supply chain.
Sounds like a holistic approach,
Yeah.
which is great. But are there any specific examples that really jump out?
Well, we already talked about continuous flow chemistry and biocatalysis. Those are inherently more sustainable than traditional methods. And their manufacturing units have actually won awards for their environmental and safety practices. They've also got a BBB ESG rating from MSCI. That's a leading ESG research and ratings provider.
They're exceeding the standards, not just meeting them.
Exactly. And they've got some ambitious goals to reduce their impact and enhance their social responsibility work. It's clear that this is a top priority, and they're investing in it.
Well, it makes sense, right? It's not just about doing good, it's good for business.
Mhm.
Investors are factoring ESG performance into their decisions more and more.
For sure. And can really set you apart from the competition. Consumers are also more aware of this, and they want to support companies that, align with their values. So Laurus Labs is finding that sweet spot being profitable and purpose-driven.
That's awesome. You
Yeah.
don't have to choose between profits and principles, right?
Yeah.
You can do well by doing good.
Absolutely. That's a message that needs to get out there, especially in an industry as influential as pharmaceuticals. So, to quickly recap this part of our deep dive, Laurus Labs is balancing that traditional generics business with their plans for growth in CDMO, biopharma, and cell and gene therapies. And they're really committed to sustainability, which is important for their bottom line and their reputation.
They're a company to watch, that's for sure.
They are. And in the last part of our deep dive, we'll shift gears a bit and look ahead. What are those potential challenges and opportunities waiting for Laurus Labs? We'll talk about how the whole pharma landscape is changing, their strategy, and what it all means for investors, competitors, and of course, patients.
Don't miss it. It's going to get even more interesting. Welcome back. So we've spent the last two parts getting to know Laurus Labs, their strategy, their R&D, even their sustainability efforts. But now it's time to, look into the crystal ball. What are the potential challenges and opportunities they face trying to make it in this crazy world of pharmaceuticals?
Predicting the future is always tough, especially in this industry. But let's start with the obvious challenges. Even with all the good stuff we talked about, Laurus Labs isn't on a solo mission here, right?
Yeah, there's always that bigger picture to consider. What kind of headwinds are we talking about?
Well, the big one, pricing pressure in the generics market. Always squeezing those margins, tons of competition. This world, it's not easy.
It's a jungle out there. So how are they planning to deal with this generics game? Can't just ignore it.
Definitely not. They're tackling it head on. A multi-pronged approach, you could say. First, they're laser focused on cost optimization and efficiency in their generics manufacturing, streamlining, using tech to maximize operations. It's about doing more with less,
Right. Got to stay lean.
Mm.
But even if you're super efficient, if the price keeps dropping, that's got to sting.
It does. That's why their second strategy is so crucial. Expanding that generics portfolio. More complex products, niche markets, less competition, hopefully higher margins. Find those little pockets of opportunity, right?
Makes sense. But they're not putting all their eggs in the generics basket, though, right?
Nope. They're hedging their bets. That's strategy number 3. Using their manufacturing to produce generics for other companies. CMO engagements. Provides a steadier revenue stream. Diversifies that risk a bit.
Smart. So even if one part of the business is struggling, they've got backup. But even with all that, generics can be unpredictable. What else is on their radar, challenge-wise?
Well, as they get more into CDMO and biopharma, they're going to run into the big guys. Companies with deep pockets, tons of experience. It's going to be a battle for market share.
David versus Goliath kind of thing. How can they compete with giants like that?
They've got to play to their strengths. Agility, cost effectiveness, and they've got some unique skills they've developed. They can't go head to head on everything, but they can find their niche, right? Pick their battles.
So it's about being strategic.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the positive stuff.
Right.
What are the big opportunities for Laurus Labs? Because despite the challenges, there's a ton of potential too.
Huge potential. One big one. The global CDMO market just keeps growing. Demand for outsourcing all that drug development and manufacturing is on the rise. Costs of R&D, these new therapies are complex. You need specialized expertise. It all adds up.
So Laurus Labs is in the right place at the right time, it sounds like. But they're not just riding the wave, right? They're trying to, make their own waves. Cell and gene therapy, that's a pretty bold move.
It is. High risk, high reward. This stuff could revolutionize medicine. But it's still early days, lots of challenges. Laurus Labs is betting that all their experience, process development, scaling up manufacturing, navigating regulations, all of that will give them an edge.
Bringing their A game to a brand new field. Interesting. Are they seeing any results in that area?
They're hitting those milestones. Remember NextCAR19, that CAR T therapy we discussed? It's already being used in India, creating some buzz. They're not messing around. They want to be a real player in cell and gene therapy.
That's exciting stuff to think about their potential impact.
Yeah.
Beyond cell and gene therapy, though, what other opportunities are they eyeing?
Well, personalized medicine is a big one. We're learning more about the genetic basis of diseases, moving towards treatments that are more individualized. And that requires a different approach to manufacturing. Smaller batches, more specialized. And Laurus Labs, with their expertise in process development and flexible manufacturing, well, they're in a good spot.
Like the master craftspeople of the pharma world. Okay, zooming out for a sec. What does this whole Laurus Labs success story tell us about the industry as a whole? What are the big takeaways here?
A few important things, I think. First, you can't overstate the need for innovation. Companies that aren't pushing boundaries, coming up with new solutions, they're going to get left behind.
Adapt or die, right?
Exactly. Second, you've got to be agile. The pharma landscape is constantly changing. You have to adapt fast. New challenges, new opportunities. Laurus Labs has shown they can pivot and adjust. That's a big part of their success.
It's not about trying to do everything alone either. They've been smart with partnerships.
Collaboration is everything in this industry. Whether it's developing new therapies with other companies, licensing tech, finding new markets partnerships, or how you grow. Laurus Labs has been strategic with their alliances. It's helped them compete with the big players.
It's a great story. And it's not just about Laurus Labs either. It's a win for the whole Indian pharmaceutical industry. They're proving they can compete on a global scale, even in the most complex areas.
Totally agree. They're setting a new standard. Their success brings in investment, encourages innovation, creates opportunities for skilled people in India. Everyone wins.
So wrapping up our deep dive into Laurus Labs, what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
The big one. Laurus Labs is a company on the move. They're not just sitting back, counting their money. They're looking to grow, evolve. They're not keeping up. They're setting the pace.
It's in the pace. I like that.
And they're doing it right. Their commitment to innovation, sustainability, and quality, it's impressive. Really sets them apart.
It's not just about the bottom line. It's about doing business in a way that benefits everyone. The company, their partners, patients, the planet.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And last but not least, Laurus Labs' story shows that success takes more than just a good idea. You need vision, determination, a willingness to embrace challenges. They've shown that when all those pieces come together, amazing things can happen.
This has been a fascinating look at Laurus Labs. Their story has some great lessons for anyone interested in the future of the pharmaceutical industry.
Totally agree. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, stay curious.